As promised at the beginning of the show, it's time to talk some NFL preseason football. I'm bringing on Seth Yates from Roto Grinders. He does all the preseason write-ups. He even did like a preseason how-to strategy guide earlier last week. Seth, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. Best time of the year. It's time to start building up my NFL bankroll, get a nice jump start. I'm sure you saw my tweet a few weeks ago. Some people were asking about it, and I'm like, there's a nice edge in it. Betting about $900 over the last 2 seasons, I've returned about $2,300. That's not a lot. A $1,500 profit is for most people, listeners, that would fund their NFL bankroll for the entire season.
Yeah, man, that's a good little bump in your bankroll, and we're gonna start here with this Thursday slate. We got 6 football games here tonight, 7:00 games. There's 2 of them, 3 7:30 games, and an 8:00 game. So a lot going on here for some preseason football, a lot of action, and bringing you on so you can give out that edge a little bit and help some people out. And we'll start here with Tampa Bay at Philadelphia. We'll start with Tampa. What are you looking at here for Tampa, as far as quarterbacks, running backs go?
Well, so what I do is I'll go through every team and I just try to Google search and read as many reports as I can find, beat writers, guys at camp, anything I can find on Twitter, on Google, on Super Bowl Nation, ESPN.com, whatever. So, and basically what I'll look for is what the coach says, what his plans are, who's going to play, and then obviously who's injured. For example, the Tampa Bay situation, Coach Dirk Koetter has said that, well, he hasn't said a whole lot, actually. Some other coaches have been more clear, and we'll definitely know before kickoff. But what we'll see here is Jameis Winston's going to start, and he should play about 1 to 2 series at quarterback, and then you'll see Mike Glennon for about the rest of the – and then we should see Ryan Griffin for the second half. A lot of people ask me on this first slate, well, who do you target? To me, a lot of times in a situation, if the playing time is close, I'm going to go for a guy like Mike Glennon over a guy like Ryan Griffin. I want the guy that is playing with the second and third string wide receivers, playing behind the better offensive line. I don't want the guy that's throwing the ball to practice squad wide receivers at the end of the game.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Winston's an easy fade, right? Like, we just instantly don't play Jameis Winston in this matchup.
Yeah, everybody that is a starting quarterback is pretty much out. They'll play a series or 2. The only guy that you could possibly make a case for is Mark Sanchez in Denver, because he's actually competing for his position, but to me, he's still out.
Now, going over to the running back situation here in Tampa, Charles Sims, a little bit of question whether or not he's going to play. I'm in Florida, so I've seen that come up a couple times this week, and don't know if Charles Sims is going to play. We do have Doug Martin, Mike James, and a few other guys that you have listed on this sheet that you sent me.
Yeah, Cotter has said, obviously, Sims questionable with an ankle injury. Usually that means out in preseason. So we're really looking at 4 guys here in Mike James, Peyton Barber, Storm Johnson, and Russell Hansbrough. It's a little bit crowded, but if I'm going to play somebody, it's going to be Mike James. A lot of people are higher on him than I am across the industry, though.
All right, so Mike James might not be somebody that we want to target. Maybe there's somebody later on on this slate that, and even in this game, we're going to talk about the other side of this game. And, just from reading your how-to preview type article, I think you're going to like running backs on the other side. But let's talk wide receivers here. Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, obviously the 2 big names here. We're not looking at these guys, right?
Right. Vincent Jackson, I think he's out. You really can't play. These guys get 1 series. I will say that probably somebody will try to correct me. Last year, starting wide receivers in both the first and second week. Second week of the season, Julio Jones. I think you're freezing on me.
I thought it was the other way around. I'll edit that out. No problem. You want to?
Yeah.
We'll start back with. I know you just talked about. We're going to start back with wide receivers here for Tampa.
Okay.
All right, now moving on to the wide receiver position here for Tampa. Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, the two big dogs. I don't think they're options, right?
Right, correct. Vincent Jackson I have down as questionable. I highly doubt he plays. And then Mike Evans obviously will play only probably one series. Somebody might try to argue with me on that. Last year we did see Julio Jones come out in a game and catch 4 to 5 balls on the first drive and a touchdown and made value. But there's just no way you can predict that.
Yeah, it's just not something you can predict. Is there anybody in this wide receiver core that you're looking at here?
Usually what we'll see is about 30 passes attempted in a game. So if a team's got a lot of healthy wide receivers, I'll try to look somewhere else that's a little more thin. But the two guys that do interest me are mostly related to Vincent Jackson being out. Kenny Bell and Adam Humphries. So Adam Humphries is listed as the second right wide receiver, but that's only because Tampa doesn't have a slot wide receiver on their depth chart. He's technically the starting slot wide receiver. So we'll either see him start in the slot or we'll see him take Evans' starting position. Jackson, not Evans. If Vincent Jackson sits like I expect, we could see Kenny Bell start out there. But even if he plays, we'll still see a heavy dose of Adam Humphries and Kenny Bell.
So they could be options here just because of volume. And if Vincent Jackson's out, we want to bump up Kenny Bell a little bit here is what you're saying.
Yeah, Kenny Bell and Adam Humphries. That's about it. That's all that interests me on the Tampa Bay wide receiver side.
So a lot of talk here in Florida about Cameron Brate beating out ASJ. Is he a guy we look at here in the preseason?
Yeah, this is tough to read because originally I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, is that just a motivational thing? Are they trying to, get Safarian Jenkins to try harder? But it seems legit. Brate's been the number one. If he gets treated like a true number one, then he'll get pulled with the rest of the starters after a series or two. That kind of has me scared off Brate. I'd rather have Jenkins if Jenkins is going to be out there against second string linebackers and cornerbacks.
All right, so let's talk Philadelphia here. The quarterback situation. Is this a spot? Obviously, they re-signed Sam Bradford. We're not going to, play Sam Bradford here in this spot, but this coaching staff wanted, Chase Daniel. As far as I know, they wanted Chase Daniel. They went out and spent money. Is Chase Daniel a guy that could get some run here in the preseason?
Yeah, it's interesting. Last season Chase Daniel was with the Chiefs, and so was Doug Peterson, the Eagles' new coach. And Chase Daniel was amazing for the Chiefs in preseason. Some people wanted him to start over Alex Smith, actually. What I'm hearing is that Bradford will get the typical starter treatment, and then Chase Daniels for the rest of the first half, and then Carson Wentz is playing the entire second half. So it comes down to, do you want half of a game with Carson Wentz, or do you want a quarter and a half of Chase Daniel? You can make the case for either one of them. To me, it's Chase Daniel. He's a proven guy in this league. Carson Wentz played Division II. I think he's out of San Diego or South Dakota State or something like that. Played at a small college. He was good, but he's just not a polished NFL passer. And he's likely to be out there in the second half behind the Eagles' third string offensive line, throwing to our 4 and 5 wide receivers who aren't that great in the first place.
So, I obviously agree with you here. I'm going to go with the guy that I know is established to a guy that I really don't know much about. So, I feel like on this slate, 6 games here, I feel like this running back core is going to be the talk of the town, right?
Well, it's one of about 3 situations that we'll get through. It was the first one that we knew about, so this is going to be more chalky than the other ones that we'll get to, but this is certainly a good situation to target.
All right, if we're looking at these running backs, Ryan Matthews, we're not playing him, right? Him and Sproles kind of out, but I think that just from reading articles and stuff, Barner is going to be really popular here.
Well, Barner injured his quad
Oh.
yesterday, or had his quad evaluated, and I'm waiting for an update, and that may be tough to get because us DFS players are probably the only people who care about it. So you'll want to monitor Twitter on this. Matthews reported to camp with an ankle injury. He just started practicing this week. He's highly unlikely to play. He might, but it's not going to be much. And Sproles is 33 years old. So you've got Barner, Wendell Smallwood, Byron Marshall, and Cedric O'Neal. And Wendell Smallwood is out with a quad injury already. So then now we're down to 3 guys. If Barner is out too, then we're just down to Byron Marshall and Cedric O'Neal. And at that point, I think you almost have to play Byron Marshall in your cash games.
So pay attention. What we're saying here is pay attention to Barner news. And if Barner is out, just fire up that Byron Marshall, right?
Right. And even if Barner plays, Barner's a kick. He'll return punts, but there's been some talk that he could play and just return kicks, which you certainly don't want. And also, he's struggled catching the ball out of the backfield, which is an important part of the West Coast offense under Peterson. So there's a good chance that the Eagles might end up liking Byron Marshall better anyways. Just a little background on Byron Marshall, since I think he's going to be one of the highest owned guys, assuming that Barner sits. He played at Oregon 4 years. He had 1,877 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns. Also chipped in 1,293 receiving yards at 13.3 a catch. So he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can run the ball. You can also make the case for Cedric O'Neal behind him. I'll still like Byron Marshall better.
So if we get news that Barner's out, do we play Byron and O'Neal in the same team and get all the carries?
Yeah, you absolutely could do that. You won't get all of the carries because there is still, whatever scripted at the beginning of the game for either Matthews or Sproles, but that's not going to matter enough. But absolutely, if you're down to just 2 guys, you don't have to do it, but it's certainly viable to get. They'll basically add up to what you would expect out of a regular season running back.
Wide receivers here in this game for Philadelphia, Jordan Matthews out. Anything else that really stands out to you here for the Eagles?
The Eagles wide receivers are tough to handicap because with Matthews out this week, they've rotated all kinds of guys in, even a guy that's down at the bottom of the depth chart, and Paul Turner is an undrafted free agent. He's seen some reps with the ones. Chris Givens, Josh Huff, Caleb Jones is a rookie out of Arizona. The guy I like is Chris Givens. He's an actual NFL player. You could convince me to play Josh Huff and Caleb Jones, Paul Turner too, maybe. But I won't have a lot of this because the guy we're about to get to at tight end, and I'll probably have a lot of exposure at running back. So you can't play an entire team of Eagles.
All right, let's talk tight end. Selleck, Ertz, Burton here. Trey Burton, the Florida Gator. Yeah. I like me some Trey Burton.
Yeah, Selleck's out. Well, or I'm sorry, Zach Ertz is out. Well, he's supposed to be out. Highly unlikely to play, but even if he does, you only see Selleck, Ertz, and Burton. Then they have Pantail and MJ McFarland. Doug Peterson used his tight ends a lot last year in Kansas City, and Trey Burton has just been crazy in practice over these last 3 weeks. NJ.com, which I guess is NewJersey.com, covers the Eagles. They've said Trey Burton's been the best player in camp. He's been catching all kinds of touchdowns. Both Wentz and Chase Daniels have looked for him a lot in the red zone. I don't get too excited about any tight end in preseason. If you get 2 catches and 25 yards, that's going to be just fine. So it's not going to kill you if you go all in on Burton and he gets you 5 points.
But what you're saying is he has the upside from what you're hearing out of camp to be that tight end that catches a touchdown here in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he's that guy, there ain't going to be many tight ends that catch a touchdown. You know, if he gets you 10 points, you got a possible GPP winning team there.
Crazy that 10 points out of a tight end could help you win a tournament. All right, let's move on to the next game. Washington at Atlanta. We'll start with the Washington side things here. What are we doing with the quarterback situation here for the Redskins?
So I love teams like the Redskins that just bring 3 quarterbacks to camp. You only got Kirk Cousins, Colt McCoy, and Nate Sudfeld. And we already know Cousins, established starter. He'll play a series or 2. So that leaves almost the rest of the first half for McCoy, and then the second half probably for Nate Sudfeld. Colt McCoy is an established veteran in this league, and he's been great in the preseason. Last season he played he went 32 of 44 for 496 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a great option in preseason.
See a guy we can look at in cash games, or are we going to talk about a New England guy that we're going to talk about in cash games?
He's definitely in there, and so is obviously Jimmy Garoppolo that will get there. I think there's a few other guys. You're not going to be forced into anybody you don't like on this slate.
All right, let's talk running back for Washington here. Anything that really stands out to you here?
So this is one of the deeper situations on the slate with about 6 guys available competing for 4 spots. I'm seeing a lot of love for Keith Marshall. I don't necessarily get it. I don't know that it lines up with what's actually there. If Matt Jones and Chris Thompson suck up enough carries early in the game, and then you end up with Keith Marshall, Mac Brown, Rob Kelly, and then Kelsey Young is a fullback, I believe. But I don't know that you can protect any of these guys for more than 5 or 7 carries, which I don't think is what we want.
Yeah, I just don't see, we're talking about a Philly situation where we could see 2 guys get the whole workload. In this situation, we could see 6 guys kind of split it.
Yeah, and there's even more situations that we'll get to in a minute that are just like Philly. So I think you avoid the 6 and stick to guys that are in 2 or 3.
If we're expecting Colt McCoy to have a decent game here, is there anybody that we could see him throwing a touchdown or 2 to?
Yeah, obviously, if you played preseason last year, you already know about Rashad Ross. He just absolutely balled out. He was one of the highest. I think he was the highest scoring wide receiver, and it was by 30 points too. It wasn't even close. The other guy that interests me is Ryan Grant. Jamison Crowder is the only major name that I think anybody would be playing that's out. But Crowder is the starting slot wide receiver for the Redskins. So Ryan Grant should step into that role. And the 2 of them, Grant and Ross, should play a decent amount with McCoy in the first half and with Cousins the first drive.
All right. I can never hate a guy that's going to be catching touchdowns from my quarterback. So pairing is always fun. Tight end interest you at all here with Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis?
There's so many tight ends that I like on this slate that it's, you got Reed, you got Davis, you got Niles Paul, Logan Paulson. There's just not enough guys injured, and I don't think it's predictable enough. You can do it, but it doesn't make sense to me.
All right, let's talk Atlanta. We'll start here with the quarterback situation. Obviously, it's an interesting one where we have Matt Ryan and Matt Schwab.
Yeah, Atlanta is one of those teams that brought in 4 quarterbacks to camp. So you got Ryan Schaub and you got Renfree and Matt Sims behind them. Dan Quinn said in his pregame or post-practice interview that his approach to this is going to be, it's not about the starters versus the backups. It's more about the position and the guys that are ready versus the guys that he thinks are not ready. And so a guy like Matt Ryan, a guy like Julio Jones at wide receiver, they're only going to get a few reps because they're ready for game action. That should bring in Matt Schaub early, and he should play a decent amount. But I think what Quinn's looking for here is he wants to get Renfree and Matt Sims a split, and I don't like that at all.
Yeah, that could lead to what, 4 quarterbacks taking snaps, and I don't think that's less than ideal, right?
Yeah, and the other thing I've mentioned before is that, say Matt Ryan comes in and he goes 3 and out, and that's his series, and the other team takes the ball and runs off an 8-minute drive. The first quarter is almost over before Schaub even comes in, and he could get a quick hook after one series to get Renfree and Sims a quarter each, and you may not get anything at all.
All right, let's talk running backs here. Obviously, Freeman, Coleman, we just seen how good Freeman was last year. Don't expect these guys to be out there too long, right? Like, these guys are kind of fragile as it is, right?
Correct. Freeman and Coleman shouldn't see much time, if at all. And a lot of times in these first games, it wouldn't surprise me if right before lock we heard some news that one of these guys wouldn't play. Behind them is Terran Ward. He's out. And so the only other 2 guys left are Gus Johnson and Brandon Wilds. You can certainly talk me into these 2. And this is another situation like Philly. It's not quite as good, but there's still really only 2 guys here.
All right, so out of Gus Johnson and Wilds, like, who do you have ahead of who here?
I lean towards Gus Johnson. He's more the established guy. I believe he was with the Cowboys last year, and some people actually thought he was a DFS play a few weeks, and it didn't work out well for him. But don't hold that against him. You can use him in preseason. And Brandon Wilds, you could talk me into him, and then obviously you can certainly play them both on the same roster.
Wide receivers, anything stand out here for Atlanta?
Yeah, Aldrick Robinson is actually, he might be my top wide receiver on this slate. Really, really love this guy. He's drawn a high praise from Julio Jones. Jones is saying, man, this guy's been good in practice. So when the best guy on the team's saying this guy's good, I listen to him. And the other guy is Justin Hardy. As far as last preseason, I've got Robinson caught 11 balls last year for 150 and a touchdown, and Hardy caught 11 catches for 130 yards. He didn't get a touchdown. Both of those guys balled out last preseason. I think they could do it again.
Tight end situation here for Atlanta. Anything that you want here?
Levine Toilio's out, so you got basically Jacob Tamme starting, and then you got Austin Hooper behind him. I'm a little bit interested here. The Falcons actually used a 3rd-round pick on Hooper. They're hoping that he can eventually replace Tamme at some point, so I think he gets some extended burn this preseason. I think he's somebody you can actually ride all preseason long.
Good little tip there. Carolina at Baltimore. Carolina, Cam Newton. Cam Newton's an easy fade, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cam Newton shouldn't play much at all. And then behind him, you've got Derek Anderson and Joe Webb. I'm sure that DFS Twitter is going to be all out here mentioning Joe Webb every time he pops up. I'll say this. Last year, Joe Webb got 10 more attempts than Anderson did, and he only finished with 6 more DraftKings points. So if the reps come out anywhere close, you want Derek Anderson.
I don't think I want either one of these guys. I'll just be honest with you.
Yeah, they're not even probably not in the top half of quarterbacks I want on this slate.
All right, let's talk running backs. Jonathan Stewart, obviously the lead back here, but I'm always interested in Cameron Artis-Payne. Is he in play here?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where even though everyone's healthy, if you dig into it, Coach Rivera said that the Panthers are only going to be able to keep 4 running backs this year, and he basically said that he considers Fozzie Whitaker and Tolbert to be their backup running back. So basically that leaves one spot for Cameron Artis-Payne and Brandon Wager. And so I think that you see an extended look at both of them. The guy I like, obviously, is Cameron Artis-Payne. He's got the pedigree. Many people thought he had the skills to be a starter in this league, and even at the end of last year, it didn't work out, but we expected him to start. I think it was week 15 or week 16.
So we've talked about the situation in Philadelphia, and we kind of talked about the situation at running back in Atlanta. Do you see these guys getting the same type of touches as what we've seen with Philly and Atlanta's running backs?
Just slightly less, but I will say that I'll still have some of these guys because you also want touchdowns. 60 rushing yards is only equal to 1 touchdown. So if you can get a guy with 20 rushing yards and a touchdown, that's still better than the guy that gets 60. These guys are both obviously in play, but I think that I would like the situation in Philly better. I like the situation in New York, which we'll get to in a minute, better. And obviously a sprinkling of other guys.
What about wide receivers here for Carolina?
Similar to the Redskins here, this is really, really crowded. There's a lot of healthy guys on the Panthers. I don't really see anybody who's injured. The only 2 names that really jumped out at me that are fighting for a back-end roster spot here is Brenton Burson and Kieris Garrett. Both of them have looked pretty bad this week. They've been dropping passes in practice. I think that this whole situation is a fade. Across the industry, you might see some love for Stephen Hill. He's a speedster, but he hasn't looked good. He had a knee injury last year, and he doesn't seem to trust the knee. So I can't go there. Really, I can't go anybody on the Carolina wide receivers.
Well, we all know Greg Olsen. He's locked into that starting spot. Tight ends here, anything for Carolina?
Yeah, this is going to come down to a numbers game as far as who makes the roster. We know they'll keep Olsen, and we know they're going to keep Ed Dixon and Scott Simonson. So there's 1 spot left possibly for Bo Sandlin and Braxton Deaver. I like a lot of other tight ends on this slate. So I think that you can avoid this situation, but if you want to go there, the only 2 you would consider is Bo Sandlin and Braxton Deaver.
All right, Baltimore side of things here, quarterback position, Joe Flacco. He's Joe Flacco, right?
Yeah, he's coming off of the sprained ACL and MCL, and Coach Harbaugh's kind of been trolling us, and he said that he has decided who's playing and who's not, but he's just going to play the game. He's not going to say.
I think he does that for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, he wants that edge in the preseason, I guess.
Right.
But I'll go ahead and do what Harbaugh's not willing to do, and I'll rule out Flacco here. There's just no way he plays. The Ravens have 4 guys on the roster at quarterback. So after Flacco, you'll see Mallett and then Josh Johnson and Jared Johnson. If I'm forced to pick somebody here, I'd rather have Mallett, especially if he starts and gets an extended look. I'm seeing some other love for Josh Johnson, but I just don't see that.
Could this be a situation where Mallett plays like a good portion of the whole first half?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Harbaugh's not going to tell us. He already said that. So your guess is as good as mine on this. It's really tough to handicap. But like I said, there are 2 guys behind him. It probably depends how effective he is.
Like, Flacco's coming off a ACL and MCL injury. Like, come on, Harbaugh. Let's be honest. He's not going to risk his franchise quarterback in the first game of the preseason.
Right.
Oh, running back situation here for Baltimore. I see you got like 5 or 6 guys listed down here. Anything pique your interest?
What's interesting to me here, you got 5 guys, and you got Forsett, you got Javorius Allen, Terrence West, Kenneth Dixon, and Steven Houston. But the real battle here is between Terrence West and Kenneth Dixon. The Ravens went out and got Terrence West as soon as Cleveland got rid of him. And he's been great in camp, but he is in a battle. Actually, he's trying to hold on to his third running back spot, but a lot of people think he could be the starter above Forsett, which won't happen immediately, but they think he has the skills for it. So I'd play West in some contests. Dixon's kind of a GPP flyer here. I don't know that it's necessary to go that deep.
Oh man, I love these preseason games. I have a little bit of interest in West because we do know kind of Terrence West, and we know he's an NFL running back. So, little interest.
Yeah, right, right. You get West out there against second and third stringers. If there's a hole, he's gonna go for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Wide receivers here. I know they brought in Mike Wallace. A lot of question marks, a lot of little O things here on the sheet that you sent me.
Yeah, but it seems like the Ravens are missing about half of their wide receivers and most of their tight ends. So passing game is going to be a little tricky. Campanaro is out. Chris Matthews is questionable, and Chris Moore is questionable. And obviously Wallace and Aiken are barely going to play because they're starters. And then you've got obviously Steve Smith Sr. is on the PUP, and Brashad Perryman is on the PUP. So things are just a wee bit thin here.
So where do we go? It's just you gave me all these question marks here, and now I'm like, all right, what am I doing? Because like there seems like there's good opportunity here for a wide receiver to get some targets. It's preseason. You never know what they're going to do, but the target should be there for somebody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you don't hate Harbaugh too bad for not telling us who to play, but he at least did clarify the wide receiver situation. At his presser, a reporter asked him about Jeremy Butler, and Harbaugh expanded on that. He said that Butler's right there on the bubble. Chris Matthews is another guy there. Campanaro, who's hurt, is right there. And then obviously Keenan Reynolds. And then as soon as Harbaugh said that the next day, which was today in practice, Chris Matthews went down. So they thinned it down for us to Jeremy Butler and Keenan Reynolds.
So one of these guys might be on the winning GPP team is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if these are back into the roster plays, so they've obviously got to catch the ball when it's thrown to them. But I like me some Butler and some Keenan Reynolds for sure. Keenan Reynolds is actually, if you played any college football DFS, you remember him from Navy last year. He was like a dual threat running quarterback that would run the ball. He was about 9,000 because he'd get you almost 100 yards rushing every game to go along with his passing.
That never sucks. Can't lie. Tight end situation. Do we do anything here? Because I see a lot of question marks with the tight ends too.
Yeah, so Ben Watson he must be like 60 years old by now, but
just 60?
I think
he's like pushing 80 or 90.
Ironically, he's one of the healthy guys. You got Dennis Pitta. He's got an injured finger. Crockett Gilmore is hurt. Max Williams went down in practice. We're not 100% sure on him. Daniel Brown is hurt. And then the last two guys, Nick Boyle and Darren Waller. Boyle's suspended for the first 10 games of the season, and Waller's suspended for the first 4. So it's pretty thin here. Obviously, I don't think Watson's going to play much. It really points to Darren Waller playing quite a bit. The guys that are suspended 4 games, it's not like you care if they get hurt. Plus, they're going to really need to show something if you're going to give a roster spot to them, and then they're going to sit out for 4 weeks.
Oh, man, sounds like a headache, but it sounds like there could be some opportunity for Waller here to be a decent option in fantasy. You there?
Waller is okay.
Can you hear me?
All right, there we go.
Oh, good. I
Yeah,
forgot where we were.
we were on Ben Waller, or not Ben, but Darren Waller for the Ravens tight end.
Okay.
So if you got to listen back to restart us, I know we mentioned Ben Watson and then all of those Ravens tight ends injuries, and then how Waller makes a good play even because he's suspended for 4 games.
All right. We should be good starting with Jacksonville and New York then.
Okay.
All right, next game up, we have Jacksonville at New York taking on the Jets. We'll start with the Jacksonville side of things here. We'll start with the quarterback position. Blake Bortles. A lot of people are expecting regression from him in the regular season this year. All that garbage time touchdown stuff might not happen with him. What's your thoughts here on the quarterback situation for the Jags?
So this something jumped out at me researching this on the on Jags SB Nation blog, is that they're missing about 3 of their starters on the O-line, and they were trying to make the case that they shouldn't play Bortles at all behind that O-line because they can't risk getting him hurt. But if he does, he's only going to play about 3 to 5 snaps, and hopefully those will be just be handoffs. The behind him should be Henne, and then they've got Brandon Allen and Max Whittick. It sounds like they want to give a long look to Brandon Allen to see if he's going to force the Jaguars to keep 3 quarterbacks, because they know they've got Henne as a good backup, and Bortles is obviously the starter.
With all these good situations at quarterback, do you think it's even worth playing him as a flyer here?
No, I'm not interested. I'll generally focus my teams down to a core, and he won't be part of it.
Running back situation here for Jacksonville. They brought in Ivory, TJ Yeldon, Denard Robinson. Any of these guys kind of listed to do anything here in this week 1 preseason game?
The only guy that I have mild interest, because obviously we've mentioned a lot of good running backs, and we'll get to some more, is we could see Corey Grant and Joe Banyard in the second half for quite a bit. Grant's a speedster. He'll return some kicks, but he still needs to prove he can do something on offense, or the Jags are likely to find somebody else to return kicks and him not make the roster. So he's the guy that could get a good long look, but otherwise it's a little too crowded here.
Wide receivers, Allen Robinson just was a beast last year. Any of these guys, we're not playing Robinson, obviously. Any of these guys stand out to you here?
I have a little interest in Rashad Green out of Florida State. He was great there with Jameis Winston. He's proven he can get the targets, and he's had a season now to to learn an NFL offense. And then Aurelius Ben has been all over the place. I think he was in Carolina last year. He's played a little for the Eagles. This might be his last chance to make an NFL team if he doesn't show something. His big problem's always been injuries, but he's healthy for right now. He could see some extensive playing time, but again, not a top target.
Oh, the old tight end position here in Jacksonville, Mercedes Lewis, Julius Thomas. It's always a coin flip who's going to perform in fantasy.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of interest in them, obviously, because I don't see them playing much. There's a couple other names here. Nothing that excites me other than Braden Bowman. He's been one of the big stories to develop. He's rarely ever dropped anything. The guy catches anything in sight, and he's been a favorite target of the backup quarterbacks when he's played with them. So you could throw him in there at tight end. He's not anywhere near the top of the list. He might be like 10 or something on the list of tight ends.
All right, New York Jets, Ryan Fitzpatrick. He signed, he's back, but they're saying Geno Smith might start the week 1? That's not going to happen. Come on.
No, I think that's pretty safe bet that it's Fitzpatrick, which kind of sucks for Geno. Last year he was supposed to be the starter. He got punched in the jaw, loses his job. Fitzpatrick has a crazy year and then keeps the job, comes back this year, gets his contract demands met finally, and walks right into the starting job. So then you got Geno behind him. And then you got Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg is interesting because, say Fitzpatrick plays a series and then Geno plays a quarter. Petty needs to show something to stay on this roster, but I'm not sure if he gets actually enough time to make that happen. And even if he does, they're still going to want to see Hackenberg too. No reason to target a four-way split here.
All right, let's talk running backs. This is the spot that I feel like you're going to want some running backs. Matt Forte out, Bernard Pierce out, Powell, the number 2 running back, couple series, and then he's probably out. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, and the other guy, Kerry Robinson, I'm interested to see what happens there. He was activated off the PUP list this week. They signed him to a decent signing bonus this offseason, which implies that they want him to stick on the team, and he's probably going to be like their third down or like their power back. But he's only participated in positional drills this week. I actually tweeted the beat writer for the Jets, and he said that he thinks that Kerry will be inactive. So that should really just leave Dominic Williams and Romar Morris as the bulk of carries in this. I'm excited about these guys. Dom Williams was with the Vikings last preseason. He carried the ball 29 times for 117 yards and a touchdown, and he also chipped in 10 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. Romar Morris, you'll remember him from North Carolina. He's an undrafted free agent. He should be returning kicks too. I guess if you wanted to stack the Jets defense along with him, you could do that. The guy I like, though, obviously, is Dom Williams.
All right, Dom Williams, a guy that we can fire up in cash games and in tournaments here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it should be a pretty close split between Williams and Morris, but I like Williams better.
Wide receiver court here, outside of Marshall and Decker, we're not playing these guys. Where are we going, if anywhere, here with the wide receivers?
I'm a little bit excited about Jalen Marshall out of Ohio State. He was not drafted, but he's came into camp, and Marshall and Decker have raved about his ability to learn, and the guy's a sponge. But he's impressed all camp long. He'll even return some kicks. You could talk me into him. You could talk me into Quincy Enunwa, and then the other guy is Sharon Peak. But overall, I like other situations better. If we're talking cash games, this probably isn't where I'm going.
Tight ends, Amaro, is he a guy that we can target here?
Yeah, absolutely. We're hearing reports that for now, Kellen Davis is listed as the number 1 tight end on the depth chart, but Amaro is right there behind him, and most people think that Amaro is going to overtake him. I don't have any interest in Kellen Davis anyways. He's more of a blocker. But Amaro has been a favorite target of a lot of the backups in practice, caught several touchdowns. He's a great target at tight end.
New Orleans at New England. Oh, yes. Let's talk some football. All right, we'll start with New Orleans and save the juicy New England side for the second part here. Drew Brees, McCown, Grayson, Brees. He's not expected to play deep here, right?
Yeah, so both quarterbacks in this game are interesting for different reasons. Peyton has already said that basically Brees is going to get 1 series, and then you should see Luke McCown. But McCown should give way to third stringer Garrett Grayson possibly before halftime. So there aren't many situations where you're going to get a whole half of a guy plus some time in the second quarter. So he's interesting for that reason. But you also got to look at his talent. I'm not sure that he's actually that good.
Yeah, that's always an issue when it comes to preseason. Sometimes a quarter and a half of one guy is better than a guy with 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, we'll get to in a minute another guy in that situation, Paxton Lynch for Denver. But to me, Grayson is right there with Lynch. But I'm still going after the guys like, Mike Glennon, Chase Daniel, maybe even Matt Schaub, Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, I want kind of the established veterans that know how to run the offense. Colt McCoy. Those are the guys I'm targeting this week.
All All right, let's talk running backs here for New Orleans. Ingram's not going to play much, so where are we going here?
Yeah, so they got Ingram, Hightower, Murphy, Spiller, Cadet, and Lasco. It sounds like what they're really wanting to see is between Traveris, Cadet, Lasco, and Marcus Murphy. He Coach Payton specifically singled out Murphy as a guy that he thought's been good. But again, we're targeting a three-way split here, and that's a three-way split even after whatever Ingram gets and whatever Hightower gets. So, for cash games, this is an avoid.
All right, wide receivers. Man, Coleman, Cooks, Snead, like any of these guys pique your interest here?
The one name that keeps popping up to me is rookie Michael Thomas. According to NOLA.com, Thomas has been just great in the scrimmages because the Patriots and the Saints have ran joint practices this week. So we've actually got to see some of these guys in game action. And Michael Thomas has been a favorite of the backup quarterbacks. The other guy I would be interested in is Willie Snead. We actually played him some last year in DFS. A lot of people aren't going to look there because they think he's a starter, but he's actually buried on the original depth chart here a little bit. And then lastly, I'd be willing to take a look at Jarrett Dangerfield. He's at the back end of the depth chart. But if you're going after Grayson anyways, maybe Grayson throws the touchdown to Dangerfield. You could stack that up in a GPP.
All right, tight end situation. Colby Fleener brought in here over the offseason. We're looking at, hey, who's going to be the second or third guy here for the Saints, right?
Yeah, there's Fleener, and then you got Josh Hill, Rashawn Allen, Michael Humanui, and then Chris Manhertz and Garrett Griffin. It's just a real crowded situation. We've given you plenty of other tight ends, and there's one more coming. So I'm not looking here at all.
Does Brady play at all here for the Patriots, do you think?
Actually, even after I filed my article and sent you the cheat sheet, someone just mentioned to me that Brady's already been announced out. And Belichick actually is really honest when it comes to preseason. He'll tell you what he's planning on doing. So it sounds like we're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett as the quarterbacks for New England.
Jimmy G is going to be so popular. Is he the cash game guy?
Yeah, I don't see how you go any other direction. We all remember picking on the Saints defense last year. Jimmy will start, but then even the Saints defense, they may not start all their guys. Peyton's mentioned already that he wants to get his ones out of there early, so you have to assume that extends to the defense. So you're talking Jimmy Garoppolo against the Saints backup defense. That's something I'm very interested in. Garoppolo actually last season he threw 79 passes, completed 46 for 618 yards and 5 touchdowns in preseason. Was one of the highest scoring quarterbacks last year.
That's never a bad thing to be the highest scoring quarterback. And it's kind of the same situation because we didn't know what was going on with Brady last year going into this season.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been questioning me about the Garoppolo love, and they said, well, don't you think the Patriots are scared that Garoppolo will get hurt? And my response to that is there's only Tom Brady and Jacoby Brissett here. So it's not like they're going to put Brady out there, and you don't think Brissett's going to play the whole game. So, and the other counter argument to that is preseason games are about getting your whole offense together. You don't run Jacoby Brissett out there for the whole game so you can evaluate your wide receivers. You need a competent quarterback or you can't make any decisions on whether the receivers ran the right route, made the right reads, that kind of stuff.
In a tournament, could Brissett be a play here just because he might see, a full half and a half?
Yeah, he is in play, but at the same time, you've got other guys in that situation in Paxton Lynch and the guy that we just mentioned on the other side of this game and Garrett Grayson. So, sure, if you want to do it, there's all kinds of guys getting a quarter and a half, but if a guy throws 2 touchdowns, that could win you a tournament.
Running back situation here for New England, even in the regular season, it's a coin flip. So tell me if there's somebody I should be targeting here.
Yeah, so obviously Dion Lewis is on the pup list. Blunt's coming off a hip injury, but he has practiced from day one. He'll play. And then you've got Bolden, James White, Donald Brown's questionable, Devlin's here, DJ Foster's questionable, Joey Gaffney, and Joey Iosefa. Now, by my count, there's 6 running backs available to Belichick, but the one guy that's interesting, and somebody else actually asked the beat writer, and he said what we're looking at here is a pretty heavy dose of Tyler Gaffney. Gaffney rushed for over 2,500 yards and 33 touchdowns at Stanford, and he was drafted by the Panthers in 2014, and they tried to stash him by cutting him, and then they were going to sign him back to their practice squad, and the Patriots picked him up. And then he got hurt again last year, so the Patriots stuck him on IR. But they've been holding on to this guy for 2 years. They want to get a good long look at him. They already know what they have in Blunt and White and Bolden. So, I mean, absolutely, why not give the guy some serious burn?
It's never a bad thing. Wide receivers here. I know it's preseason, so pairing wide receivers with quarterbacks might not be the smartest thing, especially if you're targeting Jimmy G. What's your thoughts here on these guys?
Well, real fast on the quarterback wide receiver stack, it's not even something that I usually do. When you do it in the regular season, what you're hoping for is like the quarterback throws 5 touchdowns and you got 3 of them to your guy. That doesn't happen in preseason. So if your wide receiver catches 1 touchdown, you're happy with that. But you can certainly find a quarterback who also throws 1 touchdown. Like, you don't need both sides of it, and it's actually a pretty high risk strategy if both of them bust. So getting into the Patriots wide receivers, Edelman's on the pup, Edelman's questionable. Amendola's on the pup list. Keyshawn Martin, I have as probable. He was injured this week, and then everybody else is really healthy. Chris Hogan and Aaron Dobson were starting today in practice, but what I'm expecting to see is a lot of Keyshawn Martin if his hamstring's okay, and Chris Harper and DeAndre Carter. But I don't think that there's enough of these guys that Jimmy could spread it around, and Jimmy can make value without having to worry about one of his wide receivers.
Don't play Gronk, right?
Yeah, Gronk hasn't played in the preseason since 2012, which actually surprised me, but they don't need him in these meaningless games. Behind him, the Patriots obviously brought in Martellus Bennett. He'll probably start. They've got Clay Harbor, A.J. Derby, Bear Pasco, Steven Shue, and Bryce Williams is questionable. I don't have much interest here.
All right, Denver Broncos, Chicago Bears, last game of this 6-game slate here for the preseason. Quarterback situation here for Denver is always interesting. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so Denver obviously went out and got Mark Sanchez. They've got Trevor Siemian, and then they've got Paxton Lynch. They're trying to pretend like it's a competition for some reason, but it's pretty obvious that Sanchez is going to be the guy. The Broncos coach basically said that they'll get an equal number of pass attempts in the first half between Sanchez and Siemian, but he said that Lynch will play the entire second half. So if I'm going here, the Broncos got some decent back into the roster wide receivers. I'd rather just go ahead and take Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch, a local boy, actually went to the same high school as him. So, I'm all about me some Paxton Lynch. When the draft party was going on, he was actually like 10 minutes from my house where he was doing his party. So, yeah. A whole half here for Paxton Lynch, a guy that at Memphis just threw the ball around a ton. Is he a guy that, has that upside? Does he have a floor here for cash games?
It's tough to say. There's certainly a floor there, but a lot of the coaches will look at in these 3-way situations. They're trying to even pretend like Lynch is somewhat competing for this job. They'll give him about the same number of pass attempts as the first 2 guys, and then basically burn the clock out in the fourth quarter. I don't love it. I'd rather, especially now that we know Brady's out, I think it's Jimmy G or one of these established veterans, Colt McCoy, Mike Glennon, Chase Daniel, that kind of thing.
Running back situation here for Denver. I know they don't have a lot as far as, people on the depth chart.
Yeah, there's only, lucky for us, 5 guys, and one of them's a fullback in C.J. Anderson, Ronnie Hillman, Devontae Booker, Capri Biggs, and Juwan Thompson. We already know that Hillman and Anderson are 1-2, so it's kind of a 3-way battle here, but we could definitely see Booker, Bibbs, and Thompson running the clock out in the second half. I'm pretty excited about Booker. Some of the beat writers and then the local media there in Denver is actually wanting Booker to win this job, and Shanahan has said that Booker will get every opportunity to do that in this preseason, so he's the guy I would target here.
All right, wide receivers for Denver. There's so many of them, and we kind of expect some passes to be thrown here, but man, there's just so many to choose from.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because there's going to be a lot of passes go up here on this Denver side. With you got Sanchez, Simeon, and Lynch all passing the ball, so there should be plenty of targets to go around. But who's going to get them? In my mind, you obviously can't play Thomas or Sanders. But the guys I would look for, Benny Fowler, Cody Latimer, Jordan Taylor, and Jordan Norwood. Of those, it's mostly Latimer, Taylor, and Norwood that I would look to. They should play some with the twos and then all the way into the second half with Lynch.
Any tight ends here for Denver that we're wanting to target? I know you mentioned so many tight ends that you like on the slate.
Yeah, and this is the last one, and he'll probably be the most overlooked of all of them. So, when Denver came out with their depth chart, Virgil Green, everyone thinks is the starter, but they actually listed him as a co-starter with Jeff Heuerman. So the story on Heuerman is that he was drafted in the 3rd round in 2015, but then he got injured, so he's had a year to learn the playbook and watch, but he's really kind of a rookie. So that's the kind of guys that they like to get some live game action. He hasn't played all year, but go out and see if he knows the playbook and see some film.
All right, last team we're going to break down here, Chicago Bears. Depth chart here for quarterbacks. Anything that stands out to you here? I know there's one interesting name here.
Yeah, so John Fox said that he's going to do what he's always done in the past, which is that he'll play the starters about the first quarter, the second team plays the second and third quarters, and the third team gets the fourth quarter. That doesn't, to me, scream play Jay Cutler. I still think he gets an early hook. But Brian Hoyer could be looking at 2 quarters here, and I think that's the guy we want.
Oh, man, that just worries me that we're talking about Brian Hoyer, but I guess it is preseason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
nice
man.
thing about preseason is you're talking about vanilla defenses. Some of the book on Hoyer is that he just can't read a defense, but when you're just talking your basic 4-3 or cover 2 type stuff, he can read those.
Running back situation here, Forte's gone. Langford listed as the running back that's going to start here, but what are we doing here with Carey and Rodgers?
I don't have a whole lot of interest. With Rodgers, he's basically projected to be the goal line or like the 3rd down back. So I don't think there's a meaningful amount of snaps for him. Langford, I think, would still need to solidify his role. You could talk me into Kadeem Carey or Jordan Howard, but all in all, I think the carries get split too evenly here to make anybody playable.
Yeah, so many running backs that we've mentioned already. I just don't know if this is a spot we could go. Wide receiver, anything pique your interest here for the Bears?
Yeah, so the chalk, my fantasy league 10 guy that's been getting drafted probably way too high is Kevin White. The Bears drafted him in 2015 out of West Virginia. He was the number 7 overall pick, and then he had a stress fracture. He missed the entire season. So he's itching to get his first NFL action, and I think he'll be out there being targeted early and often. He's going to start for the Bears this year, so he'll want to build some chemistry with both Cutler and Hoyer.
So, dude, is this a spot we could see him maybe run a whole first half?
Yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, the guy hasn't played. I don't know if how much they're worried about him getting re-injured, but they like to see these guys get some run.
Anybody outside of White that you like here?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Daniel Braverman. He's been lighting it up in camp. He's kind of toward the end of the depth chart here, but he was at I thought I wrote his college down, but I played him a whole bunch last year in NCAA defense. He was always underpriced, and he always performed for me.
Last tight ends here for Chicago. Is there anything that you like here?
Yeah, so Zach Miller sat out most of this week with a concussion, I believe, and they used basically every other guy on this list filling in for him, and nobody really looked that great doing it. So I think that ultimately Tony Moecki wins the job as the number 2 guy, but I mean, we've seen him with the Chiefs over the last few years. He's nothing special. So I don't have a whole lot of interest there.
All right, putting you on the spot here to finish up this NFL preseason breakdown. Who do you have at defense?
Well, a couple of things. Last year, the Eagles under Chip Kelly were running a lot of plays, and they were the team you wanted to target because of that. You wanted players against them, but their defense actually was the 4th best fantasy defense because of kick returns and because of sacks and interceptions. So I don't necessarily think that you should be looking at total points scored against your defense. That's only one piece. You want to target interceptions and you want to target sacks. So a situation like where, let me find it. Jacksonville's missing 3 of their starters on the offensive line. That's a situation where you want to play the defense against them. And then also with the Falcons, where Matt Ryan's coming out earlier, and then you've got Schaub behind him, and then Renfrey. That's a good situation to play the Redskins defense, who I think is an underrated defense anyways. And then mostly, just mix and match and try to find that defensive touchdown. Anything can happen.
All right, Seth, thanks so much for jumping on the Morning Grind podcast here at Roto Grinders. We appreciate your breakdowns and your articles that you do here for the NFL preseason. Hope to talk to you again soon. And thanks again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll be on the Roto Grinders Periscope again tonight at 5:30 Eastern. So if you enjoyed this and you got any last-minute questions, go ahead and find me on Periscope there too.
Well, I'm going to have some last-minute questions. Don't you worry. So I'll be hopping on that Periscope to ask you questions. That's going to wrap it up here for the Morning Grind podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the baseball breakdown and the NFL breakdown. We'll be back on Friday with Cheese is Good joining us here for some MLB talk. Good luck in your contest tonight, and we'll see you then.